Hello?
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello? Yeah, we're good. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and thank you for joining me back here Thursday evening here at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time, and that's 7 for you on the East Coast. And I apologize for last week, as I was just explaining to the Coach's Corner panel here just a few moments ago. I've been kind of hit with this virus here for the last month and almost month and a half now, I guess, and not complaining, but it's been a real pain in a lot of different areas, but feeling much better. Still got a little bit of a cough here and there, so I apologize to you listening out there. You may want to keep a little bit of a distance from whether it be your computer or smartphone or whatever you happen to be listening on tonight. Might want to keep it a little bit further away from your ear just in case. I apologize. But thank you for joining me tonight anyways. Appreciate it. And I got a great Coach's Corner panel for you tonight. I'm going to bring the panel on here in just a second, but let me just remind everybody, as I said, we are live every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time or 7 to 9 Eastern Time, and that's, I believe, 4 to 6 for those of you on Pacific Time. Easiest way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com, type up in the search key Golf Talk Live, and that will bring you to the main page. And always on the eve of the live shows, it will always be right at the top there and ready to go for you. As I said, we are live. And if for some reason you can't join us during the live broadcast, it's not a problem. Just go to blogtalkradio.com /Golf Talk Live, and you can just scroll down to the on-demand section. It always has the most current show at the top, and you can listen through the archives to any of the shows that you might have missed, and we hope you do that if you can't join us live. Always love to take calls when we can. You're welcome to join in the conversation if you wish. The number to call is area code 646-716-4667. And, of course, as always, if you have questions or comments about the program, you can reach me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And also, if you're in the golf industry and you're interested in coming on the show, and I know there's a few of you that are waiting for me to get back to you, and as I said, I apologize for some of the delay. Pardon me. But as I said, I've been a little under the weather here the last few weeks, so I'm trying to get caught up. So bear with me. I will get those emails and calls out to you here shortly to get you back into the schedule. So, again, I apologize for some of the delay. But you can reach me also if you're interested in coming in the program. There's still room later in the year. You can email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Always update the programs, of course, on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com /Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you add blog on there. And while you're on the page, if you haven't already done so, I appreciate if you throw a few likes my way. And always also update on Twitter. My Twitter handle, of course, is Ted and Buck, CEO, and CO is in capital letters. As I said, I got a great show for you tonight. I've got a Coach's Corner panel coming up here in just a second. And a little bit later in the show, I'm going to be joined by Warren Bottke. He is the PGA Master Professional down the southeastern part of Florida. And I'm not going to say for 100% sure, but I think I saw something on social media a little earlier, but I think in his area, his section of the PGA, that he was just elected their newest president. So we'll talk about that a little bit when he joins us a little bit later in the show. But right now I've got Clint Wright, Pete Buchanan, and Allison Kurt joining me here. And let me just tell you a little bit about each of them, and then we'll bring them on. Clint Wright, of course, has been on many, many times on the show. One of my favorites. I won't say he's the favorite, but he's certainly one of the favorites. Sorry, Clint, throwing you under the bus already.
There you go. Okay.
He's a 30-year member of the PGA, and he's a partner at TGM Golf. Big proponent of the R3 approach. We're going to hear more about that tonight. And probably, in my opinion, one of the best covering the short game today in golf. And we're going to hear a little bit about that as well. Certainly, another well-accomplished seasoned veteran of the game is Pete Buchanan. He's the founder and director of instruction for owner of Plain Simple Golf, which houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and Simple Swing repeater training brace. And he's taught over as well many years, over the last 30 years. And he believes in a more simple approach in the golf swing is his philosophy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that tonight. And certainly, last but not least, a great lady, Allison Kurt. She's been on not only as a guest, but she's been on the panel discussion a few times. She's a PGA and LPGA master professional in instruction, as well as the director of instruction at Wood Ranch Golf Club. And she's also a marriage and family therapist, registered intern, as well as the 2012 LPGA Teachers and Club Professionals Western Teacher of the Year. And she's also TPI certified, and she's been a featured instructor on Golf Channel's Swing Fix. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having me on again. Nice to be here.
All right. Thank you very much, guys, and as always, I appreciate you giving of your time. I know that we're all very busy, and coming on here after a hard day's work is sometimes not always easy, so I appreciate that. And Clint, thanks for stopping in. Actually, we had another that was going to be joining us here, but unfortunately he wasn't able to make it, but we'll get him back on another show as well. But Clint, thank you very much for recommitting for tonight. I know you were scheduled for last week, but we had to cancel the program. But thank you very much. Okay, as I talked about off air, guys, what I want to do is something a little bit different tonight. And I'm a firm believer in really showcasing talented people. I think in this business sometimes we don't give enough credit where credit is due. And I know we're all pretty humble, and we like to, certainly from time to time accept accolades. But I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk about something that I know we're all passionate about, and that, of course, is this great game of golf. So, Clint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with you, and I know we've talked about this a few times on the program that you really wanted to come on and talk about some of your philosophy, the R3 approach. So I'm going to give you the floor here for a few minutes and just talk about the R3 approach. What is it? How does it work? And how do you apply it with your instruction?
All right, well, great, Ted. Thanks. I mean, hopefully I can get the, me, I'm a little long-winded. Hopefully we can get it all in here. But the R3 approach is something that Mike Lawrence and Todd Ellison and I we've got close to 100 years of experience teaching golf between the three of us, and it's kind of something that's come together over a period of time. It's really an approach. It's really more of what we might call a learning method, a process of learning. How are you going to go about learning the game and to maximize what you have, okay? And the R3 basically stands for the right thing at the right way at the right time. We all see as instructors, we get a student come out, and we can watch them hit a few balls, maybe watch them chip and putt a little bit like I do primarily, and you know exactly what they need to work on, but in their mind they got something else they're more concerned with.
Sure.
So that they may be practicing something, we've all seen it, that they're already good at, but they're not good at this other aspect of their short game, so they're not interested in that. So as part of our instructional program, it says let's evaluate where you're at and get to the right thing at the right time in the right way. And we basically have developed a learning puzzle over the years, and the puzzle basically is broken down into two axes, the what axis and the how. And we all know, and we use analogies a lot, but golf is a lot like cars. Every car has wheels, a drivetrain, and a steering wheel. Every one of them have the same thing. And all golfers need to have some of the same things too. The club needs to be set on an angle. That angle needs to be moved through the path properly. They need to stay on balance and on alignment, and the ball then goes however far it goes. Those are basic things that every method, if you look at a method of, the simple way of learning to play golf that we're going to hear about here shortly, David Ledbetter's way of playing, or Jimmy Ballard's way of playing, or Ernest Jones from years ago, everybody's got a philosophy on how to get those three things to move through time and space.
Right.
Straight back around you, whatever that is. See, and that's the same thing like with automobiles. All of them's got three things, but we've got all kind of models. We got Fords, we got Buicks, we got Chevrolets. You got to pick what you like and what fits you as far as the method of how you're going to move those three things through the space. So what we try to do is make those evaluations and use video a lot, as most people do today, and to try to show the people, well, you got the club in the right place. It's on plane. You're maintaining your angles through impact. That's okay. We're good with that. Now, let's go on down here and check and see what the body's doing. Is the body supporting that? Do we have are you flattening out through impact? Do you maintain your body angles through impact? Do we have issues there? And if we can solve some of those issues based on how they can play, it's interesting some of the things that we run across is I may have a basic philosophy on how you should do that, but I may get a student that's just not physically capable of swinging the way I think that you ought to swing.
Right.
So we as instructors have to find the method that our student can use. We'd be foolish to try to get a person that's my size, I'm about 5'10", way overweight, to try to get the club way up over their head. I'm just not capable of getting it there. So why fight it? Let's find a way that I can get it to move through the space effectively. Once we can get our hands around that, and this is where I come into play a lot in what we do, is we move them across the bridge over here into the how axis. The how axis comes down to strategy, short game. How are you going to start scoring better? And that's where we try to get our students as quickly as possible. And we've talked about this over, I think maybe about the last time I was on, we talked about when do you try to get your student to accept that their physical swing is good as it's going to be right now?
Yeah.
When can you change their focus on let's go out here and learn how to chip and putt and score? What's your strategy on your home course? How do you play it? Don't always pull the driver out of the bag. That's strategy, obviously. Hit your 3-wood here. We see it all the time. My favorite shot's a 9-iron. Okay? I'd love to hit a 9-iron all day long. So why don't I try to hit my drive into a 9-iron? Why hit it into a pitching wedge? I hate to hit a pitching wedge. So I want to try to get it in that strategy. I want to play to my strengths and play away from my weaknesses. That's the how axis. That's strategy on how you're going to work your way around the course today. We see it a lot of times on par 5s. Person can't get it there in 2, not supposed to anyway. So instead of laying it back to where their best wedge shot is, they hit it up too close to the green, can't chip, can't get the ball close.
Yeah.
So that's strategy. And then we try to move them on up to the ultimate goal of the R3 is to get you to go out on the course and play free-flowing, take what you got today and use it the best you can. Then you regroup, make the analysis on what happened today, go back to the beginning of the puzzle, top right-hand corner. Was the club out of line? Where was my what axis, my physical side? Was it breaking down? I need to improve that. And then get right back over on the how axis as soon as we can, because that's where we play golf.
Right.
We don't really play golf in this as a club moving in the right angles. That's out on the practice area. We want to get them over here enjoying themselves and playing some golf and getting some satisfaction out of maximizing what they have. We joke about it, but if I roll the ball on the ground all day long and I feel like I've maximized rolling it on the ground all day long, I should get some enjoyment out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go back to the practice tree and try to get them in the air. Maximize what you got for the day. But, with the following question basically comes down to what the R3 approach is. To us, it is a simple way of organizing our students' effort to generally improve their golf game. It gives them a map. We used to call it the path to improvement. And what is your organization? The puzzle gives our students that type of organization to how they want to approach getting better. And it's a cycle. They go out, they play, they evaluate, they come back. So that gives them a way of staying focused on what they need to work on, the right thing, the right time, at the right way. And it's a focus issue. And I use it in a short game all the time to get a person focused on, well, is your putting okay? Well, let's check it out. Let's see. We put their stroke on video. Let's check it out and see what's happening. Show it to them. Is this good enough? Here's your basics. The putter staying on line, the club faces staying square. You can't do that any better. And, I probably brought this up the last time, too. I had a young student about 2 months ago playing extremely good golf, and I looked at him and I said, look, if you're going to try to get better than that, I'm out. I'm not going to stand here and you thinking you can get better than that when you really don't need to be. Let's go over here and focus on you using what you're really good at already instead of wasting mine and your time trying to improve something you don't need to improve. And that's what the R3 is. Keep them organized to work on the things that they need to improve on and maintain what they're already good at.
Let me just interject real quick, and I wanted to ask you this question anyways. It sort of alluded to what you said in the beginning. A lot of people focus on, and we've all seen it, are more focused on the technique as opposed to what the results are. And what I mean by that is they want to have this picture-perfect swing because they see Rory or they see Tiger or somebody on TV that has this great-looking swing, and that's what they want. Never mind where the ball goes, they just want to look good. And, it's exactly what you were talking about here is you want to sort of marry the two together. You want to certainly teach them proper technique, but you want to be able to apply those techniques and make it work. So ultimately they're going to have fun and enjoyment when they're out in the golf course. And that's pretty much what we all want to do. How we arrive there or what methodology we might subscribe to it is really irrelevant. We're doing the same principles all the way along. Is that pretty much?
Well, yeah. I mean, the other side of that, you're absolutely right, Ted. The thing that I look at, and I think Mike and Todd do, we all have our own ideas on how to get the club to work better and stuff, the techniques. We all have those ideas that we have molded through reading and our own game and going to seminars and learning new things as technology improves. We all do that. But on the other hand, I had a student I'm working with right now, a wonderful gentleman, played golf for probably the last 60 years, and we have a great time on the practice tee. He's reading 3 different books right now. 3 different philosophies on how to play. He don't know if he's a foot or horseback. He's reading one book that tells him to go out here with it, and the other. I always used to challenge people if it read Golf Digest for 12 months, somewhere in the cover story, they would contradict themselves.
Yeah,
that's true. The best way to play is this. Well, no, the best way to play is this. Their readers are confused. What we try to do is say, look, let's the two of us, Ted, you're my student, let's the two of us decide what the best method or philosophy is for you, your body shape, your age, your flexibility. What's the best method for you to use to make this 3 basic things work? Get the club through there on path, on angle, on balance. Okay, what's the best method? Whose is it? What do you think? I agree with that. So then we can take that method and plug it into the R3 puzzle that says, okay, we're achieving these things the method says. We're comfortable with those things. Now let's go over here and go out and play some golf.
Yeah.
Get on that how axis as quick as you can. We're not the 3 of us. The R3 approach is not stuck on a method for moving the club through. We're not stuck on whether you got a Ford, Chevrolet, or a Buick. We're stuck on the 3 basic things that you got to do. Now, whether you got a Ford, a Buick, or a Chevrolet, we don't care. Okay, we want to make sure it's a proven method. We just don't go out here willy-nilly and decide to try the next greatest thing, it has to be proven and it fit our personal philosophies on how to do it. But we're not going to try to take a student and say, well, you got to swing this way or you ought to give up the game.
Yeah,
that's not what the R3 approach is about. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about. And you know the only players that we all see on television, right, is the players that are playing best that week. So everybody thinks that every tour player plays that way.
Yeah.
And and so they don't. I mean, one of the challenges we put on our students is go to the PGA Tour stat page and check out really what they do and how they play, And it's an interesting conversation after that. But the R3 approach is a real simple way, again, I come back to it, is simply organizing our students' efforts in improving their game based on who they are, how long they've played, what their physical capabilities are, and we help them choose the method along with our own philosophies on what's going to be best for them, and then try to guide them through the puzzle each time we work with them on where they need to be working today and how to do that in the best way and at the best time. And it really, if they're into it, which we preach to them, it's really a great method when we're not present with them. They can take that puzzle, go to the practice tee anytime they want to, and they can find their way through improving their game and staying on target as far as their practice is concerned. We all know as instructors that the vast majority of time spent on the range by some students is wasted time because they're not organized, they're not working on things specific, they don't have a practice plan. Yep. We all know that. I mean, it's rapid fire on the range for most people. And so the R3 is an organizational path for these people to make their way, and we use it with every student we have. I love it as far as the short game, you know that. I mean, it really keeps my folks focused on what they need to work on, their stats, their improvement level, what they're seeing on the course. And to me, I don't like to use the words amazing, but it really does. When a person comes back after a practice session when you haven't seen them and you ask them what they're working on, they can tell you. They can tell you what they worked on and whether they improved. And that's critical.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you, Clint. I'm going to let the others
sure, absolutely,
talk a little bit, and then I'm going to come back to each of you again. Pete, I want to give you an opportunity as well to talk about the plain, simple golf approach. I'm sure there's going to be some similar things discussed, but just talk about, Pete, if you will, what your philosophy is and how you apply it with your students, and then Allison will move on to you.
Well, Ted, you know my background. I was fortunate enough to spend about 17 years with the John Jacobs Golf Schools, and I got to work with John himself, and there's nobody that I've ever met then, and I'll put myself up there because I've gone to a simple way to do it, that put everything as simple as he did, not only from the instruction, but everything he did was just simple. There was no complication to it at all. So it was a great learning experience to see how that comes together. So what I tried to do is after I left the golf schools, I took some time to really look at the golf swing and say, okay, what do the masses need that's going to make the game easier and simpler for them? What can we look at the swing and take, and what can we eliminate that's going to change and get a whole lot of the, those errant shots that they hit in the time that they have to practice shortened so that they can get better faster. So I decided to look at the swing, and the thing I came up with, and until you actually do it, and I tell people this all the time, until you actually swing this way, you have no idea what the benefits are. And I took the hinge and the lag out. So what I did is you set up at address. In the lead arm, there's an angle formed between the shaft and the arm. So I want to keep that angle throughout the entire swing. And so it stays there. And so when I started to work with that, on the ball control became so much easier to do because now the face isn't altering relative to where the arms are going.
Right.
So then what I wanted to do as we got into working with that, I wanted to find a way that I could make it so that's easily repeatable and can continue to do that. And all of this is based off of the basic simple ball flight, looking at the relationship between the club and the ball. What's the ball need to do? How does the club have to swing to make that happen? What does the person have to do to make this work? And so that was always the root of what I was trying to get at. How do we get to control the ball in the best possible way that we can, in the simplest way that we can? And so that's where I began to do. And you've seen the Simple Swing Repeater. It's a big catalyst in what I do. It's the training brace that we built that holds the lead angle in place throughout the entire swing. And this now allows somebody to repeat what they're doing time and time again without anything changing. And they were talking about, organizing and getting, a purpose to your practice. We also developed a 30-day challenge, which has drills in it, which they continue to do now, which the drills are all geared toward one specific goal of keeping everything moving toward total game control. And that's what it's all about: the face, the path, the angle, getting those things under control so that we can control the golf ball. So that's what I started to develop in looking at the golf swing overall and trying to take. To me, I felt the hinge and the lag was the biggest move that caused the most problems. That golf club gets up there, the wrist hinge, and in most cases, people are going to hit it both directions. They're missing it offline all over the place. And so as soon as we start to take that out and get the shaft of the club now to swing not only with control of what that lead angle is doing, but also swinging the golf club parallel to the original shaft angle at address. And I'm a big proponent of that too. And the more you can keep it parallel to the original angle, the more narrow the misses become. You just narrow the gaps and the ball flies very straight. And the one thing that I get feedback from with all of the people who are using the SSR is they always come in, I can't believe how straight the ball goes. And the other thing they say is, yeah, you told me taking the hinge and lag out, I would still get distance. I said, I didn't believe I'd get this much and more. And, it doesn't affect what a lot of people believe, that if you take the hinge and the lag out, you're going to hit it shorter. It doesn't happen. I would never develop a program and say, hey, let me teach you how to hit shorter. I'd last about 4 minutes. And just enough time to get that out. So that wasn't the case. The club comes in at such a shallower angle now, and the shaft now kicks like it's supposed to kick, and the ball doesn't go shorter. It actually goes longer with greater control. And so that's really what I started to look at. I wanted to get to the masses. Tour players already know how to play. So let's get to the masses who are struggling, because they're the ones that deserve it. Unfortunately, they're bombarded with teaching that's all about what the tour players are doing, which to me is totally backwards. They can't do it anyway. So what are we doing giving them those things? And those tour players got to those points through the evolution of their own game. We need to let the masses get to their own evolution. And they've gotten there, and now we've got to back them into what they need to do. We've got to let them see the ball flight, get the ball under control. As I've said to you before, it's not the length of the course that gives the masses the trouble, it's the width. The golf course isn't wide enough for their errant shots. So we've got to control that. We've got to get them to where they can put it in play and keep it in play, and that's going to make it more fun for them. But not only getting a swing that is more simple and more effective, but also a swing that's body performance functional. So there's no stress, there's no strain, there's no big strain on the joints, and they can swing and play and have no troubles playing. And this same swing that I've been using has been very beneficial to a lot of players who have had whether shoulder surgery, back surgery, and in many cases they've had their orthopedics say that, hey, we don't want you to play because of what's happened, and we get them out there pain-free and swinging, and there's no problem whatsoever. So it's a swing that's not only simple, but it's performance. And I know I have a gentleman in Columbia, Missouri, and I tell you, he's a great friend of mine now. Had rotator cuff surgery, had lower back surgery, and was an avid golfer and was almost beside himself because they told him he couldn't play. And just by chance, my medical professional said, hey, why don't you go out with Pete and see if you can just make it work. And, within about 15 minutes, I had him swinging it. No pain whatsoever, no stress on any of the joints, and he plays every day now. And the guy's so happy he just can't stand it. Because there is a way to move that's really functional, that's not going to put any stress on it. And I have to say, I give a lot of credit to Dr. Jeremy Maxwell, who's a level 3 medical professional for TPI, and he and I have gone back and forth looking at the movements and to make it so that there is no stress. And I used him to help me to make sure that what we were doing was performance functional, which it's the way I teach. It just happened to turn out that way, that it really is. But, go ahead.
What I was going to just was just bring up a point that Clint has made and you have made as well, is there is a lot of confusion out there. And I think sometimes what traditionally should be a much simpler process in working with the masses has become very Clint, I think you said it perfectly, and this is not to trash any specific organization, but whether it be Golf Digest or Golf Magazine or some of the other articles that have come out there, again, if you read it over a period of time, whether it be a year or so, it is very confusing. And it's not that isn't good instruction, but everybody has sort of got their own view and philosophy, and it can be very confusing to the average person. So I think it is important, as Clint has mentioned and you have talked about, Pete, that we keep the process first. It has to be simple. That doesn't mean that there isn't going to be some technical things that they have to work on, but it can't be so bombard them with so much information that they become overwhelmed. And the other thing that we've all talked about before is we really have to teach to the individual student and not teach them as though they're the same as everybody else. As Clint, as you talked about, 5'10" and so on and so forth. I happen to be 6'4", so I might have a different swing than somebody else. So the instructor, I think it's important that we teach to the individual as well. Now, there may be certain methods or certain approaches that can be streamlined and so forth. I don't have any problem with that. But I do think we have to focus on the individual separately from one another and not try to lump everybody in all together all the time. And Pete, sorry, go ahead and continue.
Well, there's no question. I totally agree with that. One of the things that I've always said about somebody's golf swing is I always like to relate it to having a cold. And since you have one, this will hit right down the pipe for you.
Yeah.
When you have a cold, basically there's a virus that's causing all these symptoms. And so what you do is you treat the symptoms. You got a cough, you got a runny nose, you've got itchy eyes, you got a fever, so you treat the symptoms. Everybody's golf swing has a virus, but they treat the symptoms.
Yeah.
And unless you go in and attack the virus, you can go get a lesson, you'll feel better for a while, but your symptoms are going to come back if you didn't address the virus, if you didn't address the fault. And so you got to get in there and get to the fault and figure out what's going on. I used to ask my instructors all the time, and I'd even bring the students in. Somebody would hit a ball and it'd curve off to the right, and I'd say, well, what's the problem? Someone said, well, the club face is open. And I said, well, that's the easy part, but why is it open? We have to figure out why. And the sooner they can start to figure out what's going on, it goes to the second part of what I like to do is I teach all of my players to fix themselves.
Yeah.
Now, I know some of my cohorts are saying, why would you ever do that? But, hey, I want them to be able to fix themselves. I want them to come to me and say, hey, you know what, I finally got it all figured out. I'll say, good for you, because that's the goal. I want you to have it figured out because I want you to be able to, when you're out there playing and things aren't going right, I want you to fix it. And you need to have the tools to be able to do that. And so we give them the tools at looking at what's going on, and everything that they do is cause and effect. And I think that piece right there, cause and effect, unfortunately in today's young professionals is not being taught, and it's a huge disservice to the people that are playing golf. Right. I see so many players, so many teachers that are teaching, one, and I'm not going to knock the ball flight monitors, but I am going to knock them because I think to a certain degree, it's not the monitors themselves; it's the information that they have that's been put out that's made it too confusing.
Yeah,
and you have to be very careful with that information and how you bring it out. But I think cause and effect is one of the biggest things that's lacking in teaching today. And I think, we've got to keep it going. And we've got to have more people understanding what that is because the masses deserve it. They need to have it. They're the ones that are struggling more than any other part of the golfers that are out there. The masses need help, and they need it to be very simple, very easy. They need to understand cause and effect so that they can be able to see what's going on and fix it themselves. And let's face it, the number of golfers isn't going up. It's going down. No. And if we're not careful, we're going to be in trouble here before too long. We got to keep it very simple so that they can play better and they can play faster so that we can get them around the golf course in a more enjoyable fashion in less time.
Yeah, and that's well said, Pete. Very well said, and that's exactly true. I think that there certainly is a lot to be said sometimes for some of the instructors out there that have been around for a while. Nothing beats experience, and that doesn't mean that some of the young up and comers there aren't some good ones out there. There's a lot of good ones out there, but there's also some that are getting too wrapped up in the technology and not really in the core basics and, as you said, the cause and effect. And I think that we have to be careful of that we don't. It's just like every aspect. It's not just in golf. It's happening in every aspect of life.
Right.
There's been lots of studies that have come out with some of the juniors that are out there now, and not even in golf, but where their muscular abilities are not what they were 20, 30 years ago for somebody the same age, because they're too involved with technology and they're not out there exercising and doing the things they should be. So they're actually losing mass and strength in certain areas. And it's something that it's a societal thing that really, and ultimately, of course, it's being felt in the golf industry. Alison, I want to move on to you, and then, guys, I'm going to come back and have a final question for each of you. But Alison, what I'd like for you to discuss, as I talked to you earlier, again, we all have our own different methods and teaching styles now. But one thing that I truly believe that's important is it's great to have a solid ball striking ability, but you have to put the mental component with it as well. And I think it's important that we teach both aspects of that, and I know that you do both of those very well. So why don't you talk a little bit about some of the things that you do from the physical side of the game to help your students, and then how you sort of marriage that together with the mental components.
Yeah, certainly. I've been playing golf a long time and at many, many different levels. And I've taught golf a long time as well, and I've realized that it is much more than just the physical component. And I think our teaching has really been geared for many years, many decades, to just the physical side, with a few people in the industry kind of focusing on the mental game. And really that shift happened for me when personally I realized how important my mental game was in accomplishing my goals and bettering my own golf game, because I still compete at a very high level today. And so when that shift happened for me, it was sort of this light bulb moment, like, wow, students are really missing out here if we're not having a conversation about how to regulate emotions, how to cope with daily stressors outside of golf, how to be able to compartmentalize the different factors in our life, all the while making this golf swing and trying to get this little white ball into the hole in as few strokes as possible. So I decided to go back to school and get a master's in clinical psychology, and actually as of last week decided to pursue my doctorate. So as I'm continuing to get more experienced in the field of clinical psychology, I'm now utilizing that with my students in my golf practice. My personal physical philosophy in teaching golf it's very simple. It's the LPGA student-centered approach. And that basically just says, every student is so different and unique that we need to teach the student. We've had that conversation before. And whatever body they have and whatever limitations and capabilities they have, I will help them through that journey of building a golf swing that works best for them. And that might include components that don't work for some people, and that might include components that are specific to juniors or seniors. So everyone is so different, and I really just focus on the student and find a golf swing, help them discover a golf swing that works best for them. And it's pretty similar to what I do in my therapy practice as well. There's no one psychoanalytic theory that works for one person. There might be a different method or a different modality that works for a particular client. So that's more the physical side for me, is just that student-centered approach. And what I start to do very early on in the relationship building process with new students is teaching them about how their mind will impact their motor patterns and how their mind and emotions will impact outcomes. So we really start the discussion very early on to get them comfortable with, hey, this is a portion of why you're not currently accomplishing your goals. What are some of your underlying core beliefs about your golf game? What are some of your scripts that are going through your mind as you're practicing, as you're competing? So really discovering what's going on the inside as they're trying to make this motor pattern. A lot of clients I work with just merely on the golf course. If we're in the middle of a lesson and I'm starting to observe maybe a behavior or observe some some verbiage that's coming out of them, we can start to have a dialogue about, okay, what's that about? You know, after every time you hit it left, there's already a negative comment coming out before the ball's landed on the ground. You know, what's that about? How can we work with that? Then there's other clients where we'll completely separate the golf game and the mental game, and they'll come into the office and we'll work on different skill building so that they can integrate that into their golf game. A lot of it might be just pure mental skills, how to visualize, how to regulate breathing to control emotions, how to label emotions, how to redirect attention when there's a lot of stressors going on. And for other clients, they might realize that other aspects of their life end up penetrating their success on the golf course. And one story in particular that has touched my heart is I came across an athlete who was an extreme elite athlete in a completely different sport many, many years ago. And this gentleman suffered sort of an athletic trauma, if you will, where he had a failure in his sport. And that experience and that memory carried with him into golf. So as he would perform on the golf course, it was basically sort of reliving this failure over and over. And he couldn't get out of this mindset of I'm never going to succeed, and this failure is going to continue to follow me no matter what avenue it is in, whether it's baseball, whether it's running, whether it's golf. And so I do find that with a lot of the athletes that I work with that sometimes their individual personal conflicts will generalize to their athletic performance. And because that really interests me, I decided to become specialized in EMDR, which is called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And originally, this was a modality that was discovered back in the early 80s. It was used for traumatic memories. So typically when we hear of traumatic memories, we think of post-traumatic stress disorder. Well, reprocessing those traumatic memories can also work in the athletic arena in performance psychology. And so through this process that I've been trained in, I'm now currently working with athletes on how they're handling their athletic failures or their athletic traumas. Being in a really big tournament and missing that putt on the last hole to lose will stick with you. And no matter, how amount of talking or processing through it, oftentimes that just sort of gets stuck in our memory system and it gets stuck in our body. And it will continue to be triggered and show up in our physical form. So that's sort of a new area of my practice that I'm now specializing in, is being able to work with athletes on their past athletic failures and reprocessing them so they're no longer triggered, and then they can perform at their elite level.
Let me just touch on a couple things, and well said, Allison. I'm going to give you a few more moments, but I just wanted to bring something up because you mentioned something that was really very interesting to me. I had a guest on a few weeks back. I don't know if any of you happen to catch him or not, but Bob Moylan, who is an author, of course. He's written a book called, I can't remember the whole title, but it's all evolves around emotional core therapy. And he talks about that, and he's applied it in different areas of life, but his recent book, of course, is geared for golf. And he talks about how a lot of our emotions can affect every aspect of our life, including our golf game. And it's interesting that you're focusing on that. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up, on my Tuesday morning show, the Women of Golf show that I do with Cindy Miller, another great LPGA professional, we have had a number of Symetra Tour players, which, of course, is the launching pad to the LPGA. And it's interesting because each of them have all sort of said the same thing. When they talk about, when we ask them about some of their rounds and how they're doing, one of the interesting things that they come back with is not so much, well, I didn't have, my arm didn't go up this way, or I made a bad shot through impact. They talk about their emotions and how they handle and use their emotions to regroup. In other words, they don't allow it to overtake or overcome. And it's amazing how some of these young athletes are coming up and are starting to recognize the importance of how emotions do play into the mental side of the game. And it's just interesting that you're focusing on that with your teaching as well.
Yeah, it's people come across as like, oh, wow, this is revolutionary. And it's like, no, it's been around forever.
Yeah.
We're just now kind of getting comfortable talking about it. And
right.
I think there have been some bigger name professionals that have been so courageous and brave to say, I've struggled in this element, I've struggled in this arena, which has sort of opened the door to say, hey, there's people that do work with this. And by the way, anyone who's ever swung a golf club and hit a shot that they didn't like also experienced it. But what do you do with those emotions once you're faced with them? And there's so many different ways to manage that and process through that. And this isn't just for the elite golfer. It maybe shows up because they're, in a fishbowl and we're all looking at them. But even the average golfer for the masses are still experiencing a wide range of emotions and failures and successes learning the game of golf. And if we can teach them early on how to manage that, then golf is going to be so much more enjoyable, whatever level they want to attain to.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that has helped, and this really applies in every area, not just golf, but I think what's really helped as well is the fact that some of the elite athletes, in fact, I think Bob mentioned on the show here a few weeks ago that Phil Mickelson was one of the ones that has actually come out and talked about how his emotions have affected, in some cases gotten the better of him in some of his rounds. And I think it's good that some of these athletes come out because it sort of brings them back down to a human level, and it helps the rest of us sort of realize that, hey, they're just like, Phil's just like me. He might play better golf than I do, but he struggles with some of the same emotional challenges that we all do. And I think it's good that the golf industry is starting to recognize that because it does. I think they're going to see over time that it does play a much bigger role. If you're somebody, as you talked about here a few moments ago, or working with somebody who's had some challenges in another sport, maybe a failure or what have you, and they've now sort of transcribed that into their golf game, that's a whole, different area that you have to work with. I mean, they may have a great swing, they may have great ball striking abilities, but if they're bringing outside emotions into their golf game, well, that's something entirely different that you have to work on. And I think one of the problems and why it has taken so long, like anything else, is I think there has been a stigma attached to it. I think a lot of people, when they hear emotions and they hear that sort of thing, that means I've got to lie down on a couch and go to a therapist and they got to get inside my head, and that's not certainly the case in everybody's case. There might be some that might need that, but Clint. But anyways, I'm only kidding. Only kidding. But it is true, and even some of the best players on this planet. Tiger is probably one of the best examples today. There's been a lot going on in his head here over the last several years. And a lot of people are looking at his swing and saying, why is he making all these changes? And in his case, I think he's been grappling here for years. Maybe he's come to the realization that it's just more than the golf swing at hand here. But this is something that's certainly has been very important. Allison, if you've got anything else that you want to add to that, and if not, then I'm going to come back to each of you, and I just have one follow-up question.
I think, the last piece of advice that I would, recommend to anyone listening is that give credit to the mental game and invest in the mental game. A lot of players will shell out a lot of money, hard-earned money, to purchase that new equipment, that thing that's going to make them hit it further, 2 clubs longer, hit it straighter. They might even invest in having a personal coach and getting some individual lessons, but that's only part of the whole piece of the puzzle. Also invest in, your mental game, and whether that is working with a sports psychologist or a therapist who specializes in sport performance. If you want to really take these changes, get with someone who can help you on the mental side as well. And I think a lot of people would be really amazed to see how much progress they can make when they really work on themselves as an individual in the mental game.
Exactly. Well said. All of you well said in your segments tonight. I appreciate that. My final question is, and I'm going to go back with Clint, and we just got a few moments left here, but you can certainly take a moment or two each. I want you to talk about what it is that you've learned. Clint, I know you've been teaching here for 30-plus years, and I know, Pete, you as well, and I know, Allison, you're a little newer to the game than the gentlemen are here, but you certainly have been well grounded in golf for a number of years yourself. I want you to talk about what it is that you've learned, what you've taken away, both as an instructor and as a human being in your life from working in this industry. Clint, I'm going to start with you.
Pardon me?
I'm going to start with you, Clint. Yeah.
Okay. That's a big question. That really is. I mean, well, as far as what golf has taught me, I've been playing golf with my dad and family since I was 6 or 7 years old. You know, there's a lot of things I could say here, but it taught you the right way. You know, it's the first tee approach. I was taught by men of integrity and stuff. You learn the right things to do, the way to carry yourself. You know, when things are not going your way, it's you know, how do you act? And I wasn't the best actor when it was going not my way. I'll promise you. I got a truckload of broken clubs. I'll promise you. And so I learned how to manage. And Allison, you make a point. We don't ever talk about mental. We talk about emotions. And that's see, we try to get a person to work and improve their emotional state on the course. You know, maintain control of what you're doing. And that's the thing I guess I've taken away over the years is I've become a lot calmer on the course, not quite as aggressive. You know, you learn. But as far as life's concerned, you know, the old joke is that everybody says that, yeah, you grew up on a golf course. I said, well, yeah, you learn how to drink, chase women, and gamble early, you know. And so those are the things that you learn. I mean, but you also learn how to conduct yourself and be a gentleman and a lady as you go. And that's where the first tee is bringing that back to the course. I was fortunate enough, Ted, as you know, I grew up in Northwest Florida. I grew up with a lot of military people. I learned to play on the Eglin Air Force Base's golf course. Yep. And you learn integrity and how to conduct yourself around the military, I'll promise you. Or a lot of those old guys will tell you right quick that we don't put up with that. You know, and so you learn those things early on. But through the conversation, sitting and listening, I was real, to finish it up, we worked with some young guys, and you ask them about the cause and effect that people was bringing up, you know, how to recognize it. You know, we were taught to watch the ball fly, and you knew the ball flight laws. You know, you ask these young guys, some of them coming up, what the ball flight laws are, and they look at you, what are you talking about? They don't understand that cause and effect, and we as older professionals, we learn how to teach somebody without a video camera and all the flight scopes and all this stuff. You know, we went out there just us and the student, and you learn to recognize and be observant. You train your eye, you know, to see what's going on and knowledge of what the ball's doing versus what the person looks like. These are just intuitive things that we've learned over the years that I think some of the younger guys they're using the technology maybe that we did it inheritedly just and visually. But, you know, the things that I've learned, like with the R3, it's exactly what we've been talking about. The method that was described, the simple approach, it fits right into R3. You take that idea, perfect example of how it works. You take that approach, you take that method, you plug it into the proper approach to plan your practice things. And that's the one thing in my golf game that's improved is I used to be the guy, let's just go hit a bucket of ball, see what was going on, chip and putt a little bit. But it certainly has improved my skills and my ability to maximize my practice. I've went, you know, you hit just a few balls, you know what you're doing, you kind of reconnect or reconfirm that, hey, I'm doing this okay, you move on. It's a process that I think you see our students, you can pretty much tell when one of our students is on the range in the practice area, if they're our students, because they're going out there and they'll hit a few balls with this club, they'll put it back in the bag, going to the next thing.
Yeah.
They're just confirming that it's still okay. They're maintaining the core of their golf game and moving on to the things they really need to work on based on the R3 approach and the R3 puzzle.
Perfect. Well said. Pete, how about yourself? What do you feel that you've taken away from golf, both as an instructor and as a human being?
Well, I think there's three things for me. One of the greatest things that I ever learned that John Jacobs told me was never lose sight of what the ball is telling you. He said, in the end, that's always going to be the catalyst for what you do. And that's one thing that I've always taken to heart is never lose sight of what the ball says. Because in the end, that's what the people want. They want the ball to go in a certain way that they're looking to make it go. So, you can't lose sight of what you're seeing and what you're learning. So I've tried to pass that on to the students. And, the other thing that was, and I can't remember which one of the guys said this, but, the other thing that I learned, it's never a dumb question if you don't know what the answer is. So don't hesitate to ask. You have to ask questions. If you don't know the answer, you're never going to know it unless you ask. So, and you don't want to sound dumb. There are no dumb questions. You just have to have the ability to step up and ask the question. And I think probably other than, and I echo Clint, growing up in the golf business, you learn integrity, you learn how to act, you learn how to carry yourself, and those are some great things that golf teaches. But I think the biggest thing also that I've learned is I've learned how to listen. And I think that has been the greatest asset for me. And I think the longer I've taught the game, the less I say. So it's just come to the point to where, I've been able to learn how to listen to what not only the ball is telling me, but listen to what the students are telling me and really get down to the nuts and bolts of not only what their golf swing needs, but what they need and getting to understand them a little bit more. And I always like to start off each session by asking them how their family is, if they have kids, if how their spouse is doing, what are they been doing, what are they up to, how's the job going, how's life treating you, what are the things you're doing, you have any vacations coming up, because I think in the end there's nothing more important than themselves and their family. And so I think if you can always get to that first, it helps to settle down and it helps you to listen a little bit more and get a little bit of understanding of where they are, because there are days, and we've all had it, where you go to give a lesson and they've had a rough day, and that lesson is going to be rough. It just doesn't matter. So if you can kind of figure out where they are and what their mood is, you can sort of gear it to having some fun and make it a little bit easier session for them. But, I've been very fortunate with the people that I've been able to learn from. And hopefully, as Clint was talking about with the cause and effect, hopefully some of us old geezers teaching this game can get these young guys to see that cause and effect and not let that part of it die, because it's such an important piece for the masses to have and to understand.
Again, well said, and I'm catching up to you guys real quick, so I'm entering into that phase of my life as well. Thank you very much, and well said, Pete, as well. And Allison, again, I'd let you have the honor of wrapping this up. What do you feel that you've taken away from your career at this point in your life, and also what do you feel personally that you've learned being involved in golf?
Well, I think I've said this before, actually chatting with you, but I still believe it, wholeheartedly. Golf is simple. People make it hard. And I think that fits for life, too. And really what that short statement really means is perspective. So we can look at the golf game, and it is really a pretty simple concept, but we sure do make it awfully hard on ourselves. We throw in some emotions. We throw in some thoughts. We throw in a lot of different complex techniques, and it starts to become a lot harder than it needs to be. And if we can take a really sort of simple perspective at this, then it makes it a lot more fun. And I think golf has really taught me that. I know in my past I've made golf pretty hard on myself, and I think through that I've learned how to make it a lot more simpler and a lot more fun. And, generalizing that to life as well, we can look at a situation 16 different ways. And put a bunch of different emotions to it and a bunch of different complexities to it. But really it's all about perspective. And if we can just have a real simple perspective about golf and life, then we can handle anything that comes our way.
Equally well said. And let me just, a couple of quick notes before I let the three of you go. First off, Allison, you mentioned about the LPGA, and let me tell you, just from working with some of the people in the LPGA through the other program, and of course Cindy, they're doing some great things. I mean, kudos to the ladies. They are really stepping up here, and just really putting forth some great programs that are not only obviously gearing for the professionals, but even for some of the average golfers out there, they're really stepping up and trying to get more and more women involved in golf, not just from the business level, but as a social tool as well. And they just have some phenomenal programs, and I'll tell you, it's probably fast becoming one of the best-run organizations on this planet as far as I'm concerned. That's the LPGA. And Allison, I know that you're proud to be part of that as well. That was the one thing I wanted to mention. And the other thing, Pete, I did want to say, somebody told me a long time ago that the only dumb question is the one that was never asked. And I believe that philosophy. I think that if I was in sales all of my life, including even in golf, and the one thing that I agree with what you said. I mean, you do have to listen, but you also have to know when to ask the right questions. And you can never be afraid to ask questions. And in the case of the students, there is no dumb question. It's only afterwards when you're kicking yourself in the backside saying, gosh, I wish I had asked so-and-so that question when I had them in my, especially when you're in front of somebody that has a lot of knowledge about something that you want to learn. That's the time to be like a sponge and ask questions and get that knowledge. And that's, when we go to school earlier on, that's what we're there for. And a lot of times we waste that time, for some of us anyways, horse playing and doing whatever. And it's only as we grow older and develop mentally that we start to understand the importance of engaging with other people and looking towards those that have knowledge that are going to sort of help and benefit our lives as we go along. Guys, a great Coach's Corner panel. I want to do something a little bit different tonight, and I'm very happy, and I know that the people listening are going to be very happy with this particular segment. You guys did an absolutely fantastic job as always, and I enjoyed listening to each of you talk about what's passionate about your side of things, how you look at the game, and how it ultimately has affected your lives. And kudos to all three of you, Clint, Pete, and, of course, Allison. Thank you very much for sharing that with my audience. And that's why I keep having you guys come back all the time.
Wonderful.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Well, I try.
At the same time.
Yeah, that's okay. Not a problem. Thank you very much, guys. And again, I appreciate you taking time away from your busy schedules as always. And I look forward to having you guys back here on the Coach's Corner panel. Thanks for sharing some great thoughts tonight.
Anytime.
Thank you, Ted.
Anytime,
all right. Have a great evening. All right.
Good night.
Good night.
You too.
Okay, that was my very special guests on the Coach's Corner panel tonight, Clint Wright, Pete Buchanan, and Allison Kurt. All three of them equally amazing in their own ways, and I wanted to sort of pick their brains, if you will, and share with each of you tonight not just their style and their approach to things, but just how they sort of put things all together. I think it's important that we share, excuse me, share philosophy, share our ideas. Ultimately, that's how we learn and how we can improve and ultimately share that knowledge with our students. And speaking of which, I've got another great guest coming here in just a moment, Warren Bottke. He's going to be joining me here in just a few minutes. But I first just want to, again, thank my Coach's Corner panel tonight, Clint Wright, Pete Buchanan, and Allison Kurt. Thank you very much. You guys did an absolutely fantastic job. And we're going to move on now, and I'm going to bring up my next guest here in just a minute. I'll tell you a little bit about him. He's, of course, a PGA Master Professional. Warren is, as I said, a PGA Master Professional, is widely known as a golf instructor to leading tour professionals, top amateurs, and nationally ranked juniors, and certainly high-profile athletes. And for the last 38 years, he has taught and directed golf camps, successful large-scale tournaments, and instructional clinics for corporate and nonprofit organizations. Among some of his accomplishments, he's been named Golf Digest Florida Top Golf Instructor. In 2005, he was the National PGA Horton Smith Award winner, and he's also considered a Travel and Leisure Top 40 PGA instructor, and also makes guest instructor appearances on the Golf Channel's Golf Academy. Many accolades, really too many to go on all of them, and I think he's got a special one that he's going to add to the mix tonight, and we're going to talk to him a little bit. But let me welcome my special guest tonight, PGA Master Professional Warren Bottke.
Good evening, Warren. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Warren, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. I've been following you for the past year, and I'm so grateful that you gave me the opportunity to say hello and be a part of your show.
Well, I appreciate it, Warren, and as I've always said, I get just as much out of this as the listeners do. I enjoy sharing the many talents. It would be a really boring show if I sat here all night and just talked about myself. So I like to have some others on here to make me look good, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Warren, I've been seeing here, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm hoping I've got this correct, but I've been seeing some little notations here through some of the social media, particularly Facebook, that you were just recently elected president of the Southeast PGA section. Is that correct?
Well, I just got done finished serving my 2-year term as president of the South Florida PGA, and last night was my final farewell meeting, and I am now the past president, or what they call honorary president. I still have another 2-year term with that, and it's an 8-year commitment, so I have 6 years in, and we do all the governance of the PGA. Our South Florida PGA is the second largest section in the PGA of America. There's 41 sections, and we're just so thankful to be ranked number 2, and our membership encompasses about 1,750 PGA members.
Wow, fantastic. Well, I knew I'd been seeing, when I was getting prepared for the show this evening, I think I saw something last night as well on Facebook, and then again today just before I came on the program, and I wanted to ask you about that. I wasn't sure if it was incoming or if you were a current president or not. I wasn't too sure. As I said, I just had a quick glimpse, so I thought I would ask you when you first came on about that. But a job well done, I'm sure, and I'm sure that the other members of your section that are very honored and privileged to have you at the helm, as it were. Warren, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of the faults. I know there's 4 major faults in the golf swing. I want you to break them down, if you will, and let's talk about them individually. But first of all, what are the 4 major swing faults?
Well, the first one is the setup. And the setup is, I feel, the number one enemy, because if we're not set up properly to the ball, what happens then is our body takes the path of less resistance, and what ends up happening then, it finds ways to compensate to get the job done. And it could be through injuries, it could be through lack of good fundamentals, but if we don't set up properly to the ball, a lot of good things can't happen. The second one is, go ahead.
No, sorry, please go ahead.
Okay, the second one is the takeaway, and the takeaway, taking the club back is a direct result of how you're setting up to the ball. And, if one isn't correct, 2 is going to have a hard time being correct. But there's ways to bypass that and be able to still do it. But it's easier if you can set it up in the beginning and not have to bypass it and then, come back and revisit it later.
Right.
And then the third one is the plane of the swing. And that's basically where the shaft is on plane in relationship to your body, to the ground. We're looking at a 45-degree angle where we see a lot of people 90, where the shaft is vertical rather than a little more horizontal around the body. And then the fourth one would be the all-important, the moment of truth, which is your impact. And, sometimes 1, 2, and 3 can be a little unorthodox, but 4 can be perfect. And I say that to say this, that, if you were to take the impact position of Tiger Woods, Jim Furyk, and Nancy Lopez, all 3 of those would look the same at the impact where the shaft is leaning in relationship to the ball. But 1, 2, and 3 would be all different in all 3 of those swings. Yeah,
and that's exactly true. And I've said this many times, and another person that comes to mind, Jim Furyk is certainly a good example, but Lee Trevino was also somebody that, if you were to look at his golf swing under today's sort of scrutiny, if you will, a lot of people would say, well, why would he learn to swing the club like that? But again, if you were to focus in on his impact position, I guarantee you his impact position is exactly the same as every other good player out there. How he got there might be different than player B, but nevertheless, he was still successful because he was able to execute that impact position properly.
That's definitely correct. And, some teachers, some instructors will go about it where they'll start from the impact and work backwards, but it's an easier battle if you can do it from the front end rather than working it in reverse.
Right. Warren, one of the things that I want to do, as I said, you've laid out here essentially the four faults that we find in the golf swing. And I want to start with, because you're right, I think one of the most important is certainly the setup. And there's a lot of factors. I mean, there's a million factors that we can plug in here, but some of them obviously revolves around poor posture and that. And I think as we in society are starting to recognize the importance of physical fitness, and that doesn't mean going to the gym and spending 2 hours a day, but there's certain physical things that we can do to improve our posture. And when you have good posture, a lot of times that can help with the setup. But knowing how to set up properly, I think, is very key. And once you've got that set up, it acts as a domino, if you will, for the next part involving the takeaway. So let's talk about the setup. What makes a good setup?
Well, yeah, and that's exactly right, Ted. There's three areas that we kind of look at, and we call PGA, which would be posture, grip, and aim, or alignment, if you will. And, there's a lot of meat you can chew on those three right there. But I would say the king domino would be the posture. And I don't know, it was a few weeks ago, I think we heard Tiger talk a little bit about he couldn't activate his glutes. And it was just so kind of funny when people said, gee, what in the heck is he talking about? And basically, a lot of times golfers, their hamstrings and their glutes are very, very tight because of their posture. And they don't get activated because they're standing too upright, or if you heard the old saying, we want you to feel like you sit in a bar stool. And by doing that, you're kind of just slouching into your posture position. And to activate your hamstrings and glutes by getting your pelvis pushed back, it fires those two up, and those are going to help be some of the major engine thrusters, if you will, in the swing to give you the power. So we like to see that the pelvis gets pushed back, which when you push the pelvis back, your chest will lower to the ball, and that's how we get you down to the ball. Where conversely, what ends up happening, people do the bar stool where they drop their knees to get down to the ball, which locks in their hips. They don't activate their glutes or their hamstrings, and therefore, they don't have any rotational motion and therefore no power.
And there's a misnomer, and I just want to go back for a second because you mentioned a very interesting point, and we as instructors and those that have been around the golf game for a long time understand this. It's really not so much a bending of the knees as it is an unlocking of the knees, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's like we like to teach our students to stand tall and very erect and abrupt to the ball, and then all of a sudden relax over it where their knees just kind of unbuckle or relax a little rather than dipping their knees or dropping their knees to the ball.
Yeah, and we've all, and I'm quite certain over the years, Warren, you've seen plenty of examples of the opposite of that, where literally it's in some cases even worse than sitting in a bar stool. And some people have just so much bend in their posture in their knees and whatnot, and it's no wonder they can't get that good body rotation. And there's other things, grip as well. I mean, I know we can't physically show some of these things tonight on the program because it is an audio program, but I think we can certainly talk about it. Grip is extremely important. Now, obviously, there's different grips. There's a strong grip, there's a weak, and then there's a neutral grip. Does it really matter which you have? Is there a preference? Does it depend on the individual? Give us some examples of where maybe a neutral grip would be more beneficial to a player, or a stronger grip, and so forth.
Well, both. The first thing I kind of like to look at, Ted, is to, basically look at the size of their hands, and then also kind of look to see what their ball flight is in correlation to their grip. I mean, there's been some very, very good players that had very strong grips that were really unorthodox, but they hit a very straight ball. And I'll use the example of Paul Azinger. I
was thinking the same thing.
No kidding. Okay. He had like almost a 3-knuckle left-hand grip. And if a PGA professional or another instructor came and just did not know Paul's history or knew about him, and said, gee, I'm here for a golf lesson, the first thing they would do is change his grip and make it very, orthodox to make sure that it would be going according to Hoyle as the way the book would kind of say it. And we would turn a great golfer into a big slicer or a pusher because his legs and his body slide activates the counterbalance. It's like when you work with people, you got to work in pairs, and that might be a negative, but his positive is his body to counterbalance it. And if you gave him a very neutral, conventional book right grip, the poor guy would be pushing and slicing the ball to the right.
Yeah, exactly. And there's others on the tour as well that have gravitated to a stronger grip. And you're right. I think the individual, there's ball flight, but also you have to look at the individual's body makeup as well. I mean, there's some people that have very, very strong forearms, very, very strong in their upper body. Adding that with a strong grip may not be the best. Now, I'm not saying that is impossible, but a lot of times you may want to weaken it a little bit because with somebody so strong and have a very fast hand action and then compile that with a strong grip is a recipe, in my case, would be a recipe for disaster. Would that be pretty accurate?
Oh, yeah. If we're speaking about a right-hand golfer, you might as well turn the left signal on because it's going left. And that's the type of thing that's going to happen. And when you go back to the opposite side, I mean, Curtis Strange, winner of 2 U.S. Opens, very, very weak, very weak grip. And through the years, he started seeing as he got older and these younger players got stronger and hit the ball past him, he was like, you know what, it's time for me to change my grip. And he tried for about 3 to 4 months to go ahead and do a 2-knuckle or 3-knuckle grip, and he said it was impossible for him to play. There was no way he could definitely do that. So, it's a very individual thing. The strength of the hand and the forearms is one thing. It's mainly the placement of the club in relationships to the palm or the fingers, and we like to see our players get the club deeper in their fingers rather than in the meaty palm of their hand. And I'll give you an analogy to that would be the same as a baseball pitcher. When he throws a fastball, he has it deep in his fingers, it's down in the finger part, and he can throw it 95 miles an hour. And then when he wants to change it up, change the speed of it, let's say a forkball, knuckleball, change up, or a palm ball, he puts the ball more in his hands, and it goes maybe 69 miles an hour, like a change-up. And it's the same type of thing. So if you position it in your fingers where that's the strength part, you're going to get more club head speed, and hence you're going to end up getting more distance.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go into the takeaway, I want to ask you one other question that sort of leads into this. When we're teaching, how important is it that we teach to the student? And what I mean by that is to his or her abilities and not to what we might wish. In other words, a lot of times instructors, and we've all sometimes maybe fallen into this trap, where we don't look at the student individually, we sort of lump them in with everybody else. That's not a good thing, right?
No, it isn't. It isn't, and that's where we'll just kind of define it as a method versus an individual. And there's many great methods out there that have been very, very successful, but the longevity and the life cycle of that usually seems to deteriorate little by little. And it just seems like you can't always put a square peg in a round hole. And you have to treat everybody as an individual. I make the correlation with that is like a fingerprint. When you look at someone's human fingerprint, they look so similar, but in the details of it, they're so different. And that's the same way people's golf swings are, the same exact way. And so you got to really, do your due diligence in the interview process to find out, why is the student here? What are they looking to accomplish? How much time and energy do you have to put into this? And what is your expectation or goal? And then doing that, we put that into the blender and make the perfect cocktail.
Yeah, and well said, Warren. And the reason why I asked that, and I knew your answer was going to be that, but I think sometimes in the past, I think even in the golf industry, I think you, again, being in it as long as you have, I'm sure you've seen this on some level, is there's been too much of putting everybody in sort of the same box. And certainly different methodologies are certainly okay. There's a lot of good ones out there. There are certainly some bad ones, of course, but for the most part, they're all pretty good. But what might be good for me may not necessarily be good for you. And proof of that is what we talked about earlier with some of the different styles of play, a Trevino, a Jim Furyk, Nancy Lopez, and so on and so forth, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus. Obviously, they're all arriving at impact the same plot, but at the same time, how they arrive there and the different styles can be completely different. And we have to look at that. And I think one of the important things, I think the number one important thing as an instructor that we have to really be is a good listener. I think we have to listen to our students and understand what it is that they want to be able to accomplish. What's the end result? What are they looking for? Are they just looking to, play a little bit better on the weekends? If they're playing in a tournament play, obviously they want to. There's different approaches there, but we need to really listen to the students and not just sort of lump them all into one category and say, okay, you want to fix your slice, you want to do this. Here's how we have to do it, and put that Band-Aid, if you will, on everybody the same way. It's just not going to work.
Right, that's correct. It's just like you got to first find out from the student what their expectations, what are they looking for, what's their end result. I saw one time a young apprentice instructor took a student out for a lesson, and they were into their hour lesson, and about the 57th minute, the woman said to him, when are we going to do putting? And he looked at her, cross-eyed, like, what are you talking about? And she said, well, I signed up for a putting lesson. And he had it in his mind it was about him and what he was going to do to her and change his regimen, not change his regiment. And she had already signed in the lesson book as I just wanted a putting lesson. So, I mean, we got to listen to the student. We got to ask open-ended questions that builds dialogue so that we can, find out more and more what people are talking about and what their wants are rather than it's about us. It's really about the student. It isn't about the instructor.
Exactly. Well said. All right, so let's go back to the takeaway. Number 2, the takeaway. We've talked about the setup and the importance of that. There's obviously different ways. I mean, we've heard, again, gets into some of this theory. Some people believe in a one-piece takeaway. Some people, if you look at some the players in past, always had a little bit of a forward press before they started their takeaway. Is there a tried and true method in your opinion? And if not, does it sort of go back to what we just talked about? Everybody's different. What works for one may not work for another. Or is there a standard that we need to be looking at?
Well, it's kind of a little bit. I try to look for certain things, but there's 2 real areas that we kind of look at. One is it a quick set on the backswing, or is it more of a lag takeaway? Number one, and then is it outside? Is it inside? What's the best way to do it? And it's, again, one of the situations where the student, you have to kind of assess their physical limitations if they have any, because, maybe a person can't rotate body or shift their weight or pivot. So, therefore, you might use their hands a little bit more actively to set the club to get more leverage, or you might have somebody that might be 6'6" and 90 pounds, like a number 2 pencil, and they're so limber and Gumby all over the place where you might want very, very little, wrist leverage because they have so much leverage. So, it varies with so many people, as far as what that's going to be like.
Yeah, and that's so true. The reason why I asked that, and we obviously understand the importance of the takeaway. Obviously, if you have a good start to the swing, you're more apt to have a good finish. Now, that doesn't mean that things can't happen along the top, and we're going to get to one of the more important areas of the swing, which we've already talked about. But obviously, once you've started with a good takeaway, again, much like the setup, you're starting to, again, create that domino effect for a good scenario or certainly a good outcome. That doesn't mean things can't happen along the way. But obviously, if you started with a good setup and now you've initiated a good takeaway, more often than not, you're going to see a good result, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And basically, a little drill or something that we'll try to give people would be what we call putting the shaft in the belly button, where you take the actual butt end of the club and put it in your belly button and extend your arms halfway down the club shaft And when you do that, you form a triangle with your forearms. And if you were to rotate your shoulders back, you will see there's very little club face rotation, or what we would call fanning the club open. And this would help take the club back square and more in line with your shaft, as well as in line with your spine. And what we're looking to try to do is have the club more in a neutral position, hip high, have it parallel to the ground. And we always say a little rhyme: if it's inside, it's suicide, because there's not many good players can take it inside and be able to get it in a good position, because it just gets to be kind of crazy and erratic. So we try to just keep the club. You'll maybe have read and heard commentators on TV. He's trying to keep the club in front of his body, or his hands in front, or whatever. And that's what we're kind of referring to, is to see the club head, the hands, and the shaft all go back together. And that would, kind of be like what you mentioned as far as the one-piece takeaway.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of people, much like anything else in life, they overthink the process, and I think people misunderstood what was actually meant by the one piece, because I'm sure you saw this when everybody, when I remember one of the first times hearing it in sort of media circles was when Ledbetter and Nick Faldo did the first video together, and Faldo really talked about that one piece takeaway. And I can remember seeing a lot of people out in the range, everybody sort of locking their arms together in that triangle.
Yeah.
And it's like, they were trying to ram that club back up to the top. And, I mean, in theory, you certainly want to be able to keep, but there has to be a certain amount of flexibility as well to go with it. And I think people misunderstood what was meant by a one-piece takeaway and sort of came up with their own version. But it's certainly very important. Number 3, the plane. Why is that important?
The plane is so important.
Go ahead.
The swing plane, it's just pretty much, is to kind of just have the club more in a balanced position. So usually you're going to find one of two ways. You're either going to be too flat or too upright, and that usually seems to be, what is it? And the key is it's really a situation where we're trying to get it on an angle, and the angle is going to be pretty much in line of the club. The butt end of the club at the top of the swing is going to be right on the target line, and that's what we're looking for. And if we're able to get that on that target line, where the butt end is on the target line, that's what we would call more of a 45-degree angle, versus we see people take it inside and then kind of lift it, and then the club shaft it too upright, and then now all of a sudden you have things pretty vertical, and then all of a sudden things have to kind of work to see if we can kind of get that thing down in a manipulated position, basically, and that's what ends up happening there more. But what you'll see, go ahead.
What I was going to say or add to that was, you see a lot of forced efforts sometimes by players to get things, and this is another thing too. I think that sometimes information, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, but sometimes the information that we receive as instructors is really for our benefit and not so much the students. And I think what happens sometimes, students can bombard themselves with too much information, not just from their instructor, but also what they read and what they see. And ultimately, they start getting into the slot. They start to, again, force the issue, if you will, or force that effort. And ultimately what ends up happening is they force it here in the backswing. Then they're trying to get into that perfect impact position. And they're no longer really swinging the club anymore. It's just going from point A to point B. And in theory, it may be correct, but in practicality, it's not always going to work, because what ends up happening is they get out of sync. Their body gets out of sync. It's not a free-flowing or fluid motion anymore. It's let's get it here, let's get it there. It's got to look this way when it gets over here. And ultimately, there's too much thought process going on. So how do we combat that? How do we keep it simple enough that we don't bombard them with too much information?
Well, what we try to do is, if you get the club set properly, we try to promote more letting the club work with gravity rather than you trying to work it through manipulation. And again, going back to the more upright swing, where people lift the club up a little bit too much or do something to that effect, what ends up happening, they got to reroute the club some which way with their body or do something in order to try to get it into that perfect position down at impact. And it's just one of those types of situations where if you can try to get the club balanced in a little better position, the club will be balanced better if it's more on a horizontal around your body more. That's where the club is made, and the manufacturer has that club balanced more horizontally than it does vertically. If you tried to vertically put your finger underneath the butt end of the club, it's going to tip and top because of the club head is so heavy,
right.
And that's where it's going to wiggle and waver. But if you put it where it's balanced in the mid shaft, you could probably balance a club in on your pointer finger in a horizontal way, and that's how the club is balanced. So if we can get the club balanced in the backswing and then use the law of gravity and let gravity do it, all of a sudden good things can happen. And that's what we see with a lot of the European, Korean girls, some of the Asian girls, where they're, 92 pounds wringing wet, and they hit a 250, 260 off the tee, and we go, where does she get her power? Well, it's a lot of the balance, it's a lot of the leverage. Obviously, she's not strong, but there's that kind of fools you a little bit because she might have 4% body fat, and she might be a lot stronger than you think. But it's not a lot of manipulation. Where then you see a guy 300 pounds, he's a wrestler, he's 6'6", and he hits it off the tee 175 yards, and you're going, how come this guy's not crushing the ball? Well, he might have the club in the palm of his hands. He might be sliding and swaying and not rotating his body. He might be throwing the club down from the top instead of letting it glide or come in very low and shallow and balanced. So, people just automatically think their physical physique that someone's going to hit it well or not.
Right. And you raise an interesting point. As I talked about earlier in the program with my guest panel on the first hour, I also host another show with LPGA professional Cindy Miller on Tuesday mornings called the Women of Golf Show. And we've this year we've started bringing on some of the young guns, if you will, on the Symetra Tour, which of course, as you know, is the launching pad to the LPGA. And
sure.
that very point that you just talked about. Some of these young girls are barely 5 feet tall, maybe 3-4% body fat, and they're just belting. In fact, we had Caroline Westrup on this week, and she talked about hitting it out there 260 plus. I know a lot of guys that are 6'4" and 250 pounds that can't hit it that far. And what's interesting, and Warren, I'm sure you know this if you've been to many different PGA events and watch some of the pros hit. It's very effortless when you watch them.
Sure.
They're not cranking it up there and just swinging until they come out of their shoes. It's very
right.
Freddie Couple comes to mind. Boom Boom hit it miles. I've seen him personally hit in person as well as watched him on TV, and his swing is very very fluid. Certainly a little different style at the top than some people do. But the point is that they're not killing the ball, but yet they can hit it a mile. And everybody sits there, I don't understand how they do it. Well, it's because they're putting all the pieces together that we're talking about here in the right order, if you will. And they're doing it with an effort and a fluidity, if you will, and tempo. Tempo is extremely important. That's something that I think gets overlooked by a lot of people, is they don't learn to understand or feel what their tempo is. Give me a quick example before I let you respond. You look at a Freddie Couples, and then you look at somebody like Nick Price. Two great ball strikers, two very accomplished players, but two different tempos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no question about it. Freddie's swing, and I ditto to what you just said, too, as far as seeing him in person. The big lazy swing, Ernie Els, the big easy, another one that's very slow and easy. And these players are categorized as swingers, and then you have the category of hitters like a John Daly and Tiger Woods that are very aggressive, Mark Calcavecchia, that just jump at the ball and try to hit it. And the thing is, it's all has to do with body makeup. It's body fat. It's what kind of flexibility they have. So there's no right way or wrong way. It's just more personality, temperament, demeanor goes all into it. But I honestly believe it. Fred has been so fortunate because how well he's taking care of his body and the long, fluid, easy swing. I think part of that was birthed from a little bit of a deteriorating back, or a back problem that would always regenerate itself. So for him to continue to do it, he's able to. And every year at the Masters, he always kind of makes a little bit of a run at it where everybody gets that buzz going, boom, boom's back, and then eventually he'll kind of realize that he's the calendar has passed him a little bit with these young guns. But then you go fast forward to Ricky Fowler and Rory, and you really look at the percentage of body fat, how much time these guys spend in the gym and what they do and how far they hit it. It's just phenomenal. I mean, there's a lot to do with technology, but it's getting the best out of your technology with your equipment and with your body. And yet, Ted, I'll tell you what, of all the things fast forward 10 years from where we were 10 years ago, the scores are still the same. They're not getting any lower. Handicaps are not dropping. We have all this technology, high-speed cameras, all this physique, all this fitness, and yet, they're not shooting 55s and 57s. I mean, you have your occasional 61 and 63, but, they were doing that back with Hogan.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what a lot of it is, too, Warren, you bring up, and I've made no bones about this on the program, it's interesting to see the different equipment and different technology, but it has its proper place. One of the things, and I understand why they do it, and it's all marketing and that sort of thing, and I'm not, I don't say these things to criticize on one hand, but on the other hand, I think that one of the things that the golf industry has done its a disservice to itself is, especially on the equipment side. I think we certainly have to evolve and we have to come out with new technology in that. But I think through very creative marketing, they've convinced a segment of the population, if you will, that by having driver A or driver B, that they're going to suddenly miraculously cure their problems. And it certainly can help and can enhance certain things, but it can also enhance some of the problems too. If you don't know how to use your equipment, I mean, you could it's like putting somebody in a Toyota, let's say, and saying, okay, I want you to drive down the street, and then putting them in behind in a Ferrari. If they don't know how to handle that Ferrari, you can be in some real trouble. And the technology is great, and it certainly has helped certainly many of the pros, and it certainly has helped some of the amateurs as well. But there is a lot of frustration out there right now. People that have spent a lot of money over the years buying into some of the technology, but again, the scores are not changing, and they're frustrated. So what do we do as an industry to change that?
Yeah, well, you just got to enlighten them a little bit and try to get back to basic fundamentals. And regardless of the methods that you're teaching or your own philosophy, there's a lot of basic fundamentals that everybody goes back to. And they have to, and that they have no other choice because that's the root of the golf swing. And, kudos to the companies that come out with the technology and the new equipment, but shame on them to put a tagline to it to say you're going to get 15 more yards, in distance if you buy this XYZ driver. And it's ludicrous. And there's a company out there that comes up with a new driver, 3 times a year, and it's like no sooner you get it out of the box, and the next generation's back out, and the public just spent $4.99 for it, and they're like, oh my gosh, now I got to get the newest and the latest one, and really there's no difference. Maybe a different color paint, or we shaved the toe a degree more open, or we put a little bit of the center of gravity back a little bit, an inch, and it's great marketing for them and great for sales, but really it's a disservice to the golfer.
Well, what's happening is, and I think that anybody that really is being honest in this business, I think that there has been certainly a decline, and for a number of reasons. It's not just because of that. There has been a decline in the industry of not only the number of rounds, but the number of people playing. And there's a couple of factors. It's not all about equipment. There's other factors. There's a younger generation that's coming up that doesn't seem to be gravitating. They're looking at some of the frustration that's out there, and they're saying, Lord, I'm not even going to bother trying that. I haven't got a hope in heck of getting out there and playing some good golf. But also there's time restrictions. There's a myriad of things. But equipment certainly has played its role. The golf balls as well. A lot of great golf balls out there. But when you're opening up, your magazine and you're seeing about 50 or 60 different styles of golf balls and 5 or 6 within the same manufacturer, people are scratching their head. They don't know, now you've got to be fitted for your golf ball. It's not just a matter of being fitted for your clubs anymore. Now you've got to be fitted for your golf ball. And it's the same thing with the technology. It's become so confusing to the consumer. And I think part of the problem in this has been, Warren, from what I've seen myself and what I've experienced, is this. The information that we gather with this different equipment and technology that's out there is great for us, the instructors. The danger
Right.
that's happened, I think, is that some, not all, but some of the instructors have now tried to parlay that out to the public who don't
Sure.
really understand, who haven't really worked with this equipment. They don't understand, and now they're bombarded with 1,000 different numbers and launch angles and this. And on top of, well, last week, I just had to bring my club up here, and now I've got to worry about ball speed. I've got to worry about club head speed. I've got to worry about all these other things. Now their head's spinning like a slot machine, and they don't know what to do. So they get frustrated. And I think one of the things that we have to start doing is we have to learn when to keep our mouths closed. And what I mean by that is we need to use that equipment. It's there for us to use as instructors, but I think that we have to be careful and not necessarily transfer all of that information to our students. Use it in assessments and use it as a guide, if you will, but not so much that we're confusing the students. And then we sort of melt that information down and formulate what we feel is best from what we've seen from the data that we've gathered in. Because, and I'm sure you've been down to the PGA show and you know what I'm talking about. There's just all kinds of gadgets down there, and it gets to the point that, this year when you'll go down there in January, it'll be the same thing. There'll be, 2 or 3 more companies that have come up with something else that makes these same claims. And pardon me. And it's just not, in my opinion, not doing the industry a service.
No, and like we just said, I keep going back to the same comment. You got to go back to basics, and you made some great points there, and I think some of it's driven with the different types of generations. I know you and I can safely say we're the baby boomer group, and
yes.
And so we think and do things a little bit different than the millennials, and then you got Generation X in between. And the thing is, if your student is in that, 15 to 25 or 30-year-olds, they want all the bells and the whistles and the numbers to quantify everything, and they're just not satisfied if they don't have that. Where we, me personally, has trained my eye. I don't even use any of that stuff. And I saw a young instructor at an academy a couple of weeks ago, and he gave a lesson with TrackMan, and nothing against TrackMan. It could be any different type of launch monitor. And the kid did not even look at the student. He was so engrossed with the numbers. And did he change the ball flight? Yeah, a little bit, but then he was tweaking with shafts, and the poor guy was just, he was from our era, so he walked out of there just spinning like a top, and it was just embarrassing that we would call ourselves a golf instructor and that type of thing as far as an artist and do it that way versus, the old-fashioned way. And, sometimes we got to just look at the student that comes to us, and it kind of goes back to, is someone a visual learner or a kinesthetic learner, and you got to give them what they're used to and how they can learn. But boy, I tell you what, it's really tough sometimes when you get these super kids and this is all they want is all the data.
Yeah, and I've made no bones about it, and I know you've seen it. I'm sure if you follow any of the different groups, the golf groups and that we see on social media, and sometimes they get to be, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think one they just closed down not too long ago. Somebody had mentioned, I saw a post there that they closed it down because it was just getting, the discussions were not discussions, they were just heated. back and forth and just, name calling and that. And that's another thing that bothers me as well is, to me, I look at it this way. I certainly don't know everything. I know you don't know everything. But I think if we can have, and that's not obviously meant as a criticism, it's just meaning that this is a process. We're always learning as we go along. Obviously, some of us that have been in it a little bit longer have more experience, and we can draw from that experience, and hopefully we can help those that are up and coming. But at the same point, I think that we also have to be respectful and keep our minds open to new ways of thinking and not be so bound and bent and regimented in one direction. But at the same time, we have to be respectful of one another. Just because you may or may not agree with something that I do or vice versa doesn't necessarily make it wrong. It just, as we talked about with the students, everybody's different. Everybody's teaching style is different, and we need to be respectful. And when I see things like these forums that go on, and it's just, getting into the name calling, and these are, people within the profession, it really sort of turns my stomach a little bit, and that's something that I don't want to do with my program. We have some great discussions on here, and I may hear some things that I don't necessarily agree with, and I may challenge it from time to time, but I'm always respectful of it, and I think that that's how we have to keep this profession going. Let me ask you another question, Warren, and this is pertaining to the students and the instructors. What part do we play, and what part does the student play in helping them get to that good game of golf?
Well, I think it's a situation you can kind of put it into a plain, simple analogy. If you're sick and you go to a physician and he writes you out a prescription, let's say you have an infection, an upper respiratory infection, and gives you a Z-Pak or an antibiotic, put the the prescription to the side and don't take it, and you're going, gee, that doctor didn't really help me. He was kind of a quack. I still feel worse 2 weeks later. Well, you didn't do your due diligence. You didn't do your homework. Well, switch it around to a golf instructor, and if I'm going to make a major swing change with somebody that's really willing to see a result or go to another level or a very, very high-profile player, you got to give them the prescription, and they got to take the medicine, and they got to do their part in order to do this. And I'll tell them up front, this could be something that's going to be 3 to 6 months. This is going to be something 3 to 5 days, and you got to just let them know. And are you willing to make the commitment? Do you want to do it? And if not, then I might not take that task. I might not take that student because I really don't want to be a casualty on their list as saying I'm an instructor that failed to them and I didn't meet their expectations. So it's so important to do that initial interview in the beginning and tell me why you're here, what do you want to do, where did you come from, how long was it since your last golf lesson, am I your 7th teacher this year or this week or this month? And you got to ask those questions because you might be just walking into quicksand, and it just could be the worst thing for you, and it's very, very tough. And then, to kind of reiterate a comment you said, too, about the teachers, against each other and stuff. And I've been out on the tours. I've been fortunate to have about 25 different tour players that I've worked in the last 40 years with. And I'll tell you what, the respect that we try to do for each other out there with the high-profile players is respect each other. And sometimes, you get fired, and the next guy picks you up. And, we'll use Sean Foley as an example. Maybe he would take a player of mine, and I have nothing against Sean. And, if Sean could go ahead and help my player and make him win, well, maybe they communicated a little bit better, or maybe he came in with a different angle and said something differently or whatever, but we're on the same page, if you will. And for me to go and badmouth him, he's another golf professional. He's trying to help a player, and that's what it's all about. If he could do it and get them to win, it's about the player. I'd be the first one to shake the player's hand, and then also Sean's to say, job well done, guys.
That's an excellent point, and it brings to mind I think it was about 2 years ago when Tiger might have been a little bit longer than that, but when Tiger was starting to sort of reinvent the wheel, if you will. And I remember there was a lot of public criticism. A lot of people thought, well, he should have stayed with Butch, and others thought he should have stayed with Hank, and it was just a lot of this back and forth, and it just made me sort of chuckle inside. But at the same time, again, it sort of got that nausea feeling, thinking to myself, obviously their time was well served, but maybe it was time to move on. And there's reasons that player or maybe even that coach needs to make that decision, or maybe it's a mutual decision. But it just sort of it goes back to what we were just talking about. Is it just amazing sometimes when we hear some of this criticism going on within the industry that, well, so-and-so should be teaching them this and so-and-so should be teaching them that. And, that's between the student and that's between the player. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion, but sometimes opinions need to be kept to oneself. Having said that, I agree with what you're saying here as well, Warren, about one of the criticisms I have with some of the students that I've worked with over the years. I do a lot of corporate stuff primarily is what I've done over the years, and it just was purely the choice and sort of fell into my lap at the time. But one of the things that I always used to say to these gentlemen that particularly that I worked with is I always said to them, I can help you pretty much accomplish anything that you want. Once I understand what your goals are, I'll let you know whether I feel that they're realistic or not based on the commitment you're willing to put into them. In other words, if you've got a 25 handicapper and he wants to be scratched in the next year, well, he's got a lot of work to do. If they're not willing to put that commitment, like you said, whether it be 3, 6 months or longer, then that's not going to happen. And I don't care who they go to. There's nobody that's going to have, a magic spell or a potion that they're going to get that's going to change them overnight. So it's up to the student. And that's the part the student has. You and I can do whatever, magic, if you will, that we want. But if the student's not willing to play a role and ante up to their commitment, then it's just not going to happen. And I'm the same way as you. I'm sort of from that old school. I don't want to, open up a hornet's nest by promising somebody something if I know full well they're not going to make that commitment, because I know it's not going to happen and it's just going to blow back on me. And fortunately, touch wood, I've been very lucky over the years, but I've made that very clear up front. And I think that that's something too that the technology has sort of robbed some of the millennial instructors from, as they've relied so much on this technology and made so many promises based on that. And I think people are starting to realize that, the technology is good and it has its purpose, but at the end of the day, when the power goes out or the battery dies, where's the technology?
Right, exactly. And and there's a cost factor to it and everything all and above. When you really kind of use the perfect bookends here, we use Tiger again as another example. I mean, Butch is in his late 60s, I think, maybe almost 70. Don't quote me, I don't know. But here's a guy from an era, a little bit before you and me, and he has his set of scruples. He has his own set of beliefs. And now we have Chris Como, who's under 40 or about 40, and he's more of a millennial generation kind of, on the cusp kind of guy. And then you got Tiger in the middle, and, they're both probably saying a lot of the same things on those both spectrums, but one's using it with technology to tell them and the other one's showing them with ball flight. And who's right and who's wrong, I'm sure that a lot of them are saying the same thing, but if you stood there, you would scratch your head going, wow, how is this working? But golf is complicated, but it's really not that complicated when you get down to the nuts and bolts of this thing.
Exactly. Well, Warren, it's hard to believe, but our time is just about out. But I want to give you the last couple of minutes just to let those that are tuning into the program tonight to know how they can reach out if they're interested in connecting with you in some way, whether it be a fellow professional that wants to come and talk with you and maybe collaborate on some projects, or maybe some students out there that need some help with their games. Why don't you tell them how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ted. I'm at the Abacoa Golf Club in Jupiter, Florida. I've been there for 16 years. I have a golf academy called Abacoa Golf Academy. We have a website, abacoagolfacademy.com. I also have warrenbottkegolf.com. And we have an academy that we opened up the first of the year in January, And we've been open for about 6 months. We're starting to do corporate outings. We're starting to have a golf school. We're building our building to have some buildings and technology and bays. And I have 4 instructors that work for me. And it's just been a great gamut. It's been a great experience. It's been a lot of fun. And it's nice to be where I am, where I'm able to pour back into some other young instructors and show them the ropes, if you will. And it's just been great. So, and like I said, our audience has been anywhere from a touring professional to a 5-year-old boy or Mrs. Jones and people that we see. So we don't want you to feel, intimidated like a tour professional may have been there, and now how can I even come in and swim? Because we're all things to all people. So we cover all the populations, all the genders, and we just have a great time.
And that's the perfect way to approach this, is just to invite everybody and make them feel welcome, and listen. Number one, as I said, listen to what their needs are, and then customize, if you will, a game plan and helping them reach and achieve their goals. And ultimately, Warren, I think that we want to make sure that they're having fun, and I think that that's something that truly has been lacking here in recent times. And I think we need to get if you will excuse the language, the F word back into golf, and that's fun, of course.
No question about it. That's our number one priority at our facility. If we can't laugh and have fun, we're not going to do it.
Exactly. Warren, I want to thank you very much for coming on. I've enjoyed our conversation, and as I've said many times, I always feel that I learned something as well that will help me in my continued journey in golf, and I enjoyed sharing your knowledge as well, not only with my general audience, but I know that there's a lot of other instructors that tune into the program as well, and I know through much of the feedback that they always learn a little bit more each time they tune in from other great instructors such as yourself. So Warren, thank you very much, and I have an open door policy. You're welcome to come back anytime, and I'm going to get you in the mix here on the Coach's Corner panel. I'm not sure if you followed that part or not, or familiar with it, but
a little bit, sure.
Yeah, a panel discussion with some other fellow teach professionals out there. So I'll be in touch with you here shortly and send you out the list. Okay. And if you're able to jump in here at some point through the year, that's great. If not, we'll get you set up for next year as well. And one last thing I'd love for you to do is I would love for you to reach out to some of your other fellow professionals in your chapter there, and just extend an invitation to them as well to please reach out, and if they'd like to come on and share their insight and their approach, if you will. As I said, I have an open door policy here on Golf Talk Live, and I would love to honor them and honor my audience with some of their knowledge as well. So please extend an invitation on my behalf.
No, I definitely will. It's been truly a pleasure. It's been a great opportunity to sit here and talk with you and chat about something I'm so passionately about, as well as yourself. And kudos to your show and success and what you've been doing, Ted, to give back to the game of golf. I really appreciate it. Well,
thank you, Warren. And as I said, it makes it easy every week when I've got great people such as yourself and the panel that was here earlier coming on, and it makes it very easy and enjoyable. And as I said, I always feel that I learned something along the way. And one of the great things about doing this type formatted program is we're reaching really everybody around the globe. Anybody anywhere can tune into this program by simply following the link. And of course, as you've seen, I'm on every week on Facebook and some of the other social media promoting the program and that. So the more the merrier, and the audience has continued to grow every year since I've started it. And I'm going to keep doing it as long as I have that captive audience, and it seems to be good so far. So thank you very much, Warren, for stepping up and joining me tonight. And I will be in touch with you shortly to join in on some of the Coaches' Corners as well.
Okay, that's great, Ted. Thank you. It was awesome, and best of luck and success to you. And I'm available anytime you need me.
All right, and thank you for tuning in as well. I appreciate you listening to the program.
Sure, no problem. You have a good night.
All right, thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, bye. Okay, that was my special guest, of course, Warren Bottke. He's a PGA Master Professional. Great guy. Just enjoyed again talking about this great game, and certainly an asset to the golf industry. And I hope, Warren, that you have much continued success and luck in your ventures as well. And thank you for sharing with my audience tonight. One last quick note. Again, thank you to the Coach's Corner panel, Clint Wright, Pete Buchanan, and of course Allison Kurt. Thank you very much for your input. And I want a special thank you to some quick people I'm going to have to run through because I'm almost out of time. Jonathan Laird from South Coast Golf Guide, thank you for all of your support and sponsorship. Meredith Kirk from Meredith Kirk Golf, Nikki and Tiffany Litherland, thank you for helping spread the word. Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, thank you for your support as well. Sean Kelly, owner of linkedgolfers.com, thank you for your continued support. And, of course, my good buddy Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Again, thank you. I want to take this opportunity one more time to thank not only my guests tonight, Allison Kurt, Clint Wright, and Pete Buchanan, and also my special guest, Warren Bottke. Thank you for coming in, and it's been a pleasure and honor to have you on the show. But I want to thank all of you, the listeners from around the world, for faithfully tuning in to Golf Talk Live each and every week. I certainly get a tremendous amount of pleasure, and it's because of you, all of you, that have helped to make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. And on that note, feeling much better this week. Thank you for all the well wishes from those of you that have reached out. And I will see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody.